Hey there, I'm Nick.
And I'm Lewis.
Welcome to The Collective Cast, a podcast by and for indie app developers.
We're here to have an open and honest conversation about the highs and lows of app development.
So today we're going to be talking about Smooth Reviews, which is a service to both give and receive App Store reviews, kind of in a karmic fashion. Just a disclaimer up front: this isn't like a paid endorsement or anything. This is just our take on our experience with the service, so your mileage may vary. Smooth Reviews is a way to discover random apps, and then you basically download the app, play around with it, and then you just give it like an honest App Store review. You know, whatever you would naturally do for it. And then you take a screenshot of your app review and you basically get like a karma point on this site. And then at some heretofore later date, another user will come across your app and review it in the same fashion, and that will deduct one of your karma points. So in that way, you can both give and receive reviews in kind of a decentralized, open fashion where you're not violating any rules because you're not paying for reviews. You're not explicitly giving a tit for tat for reviews. It's more like you go on and as like a good app citizen, you review a set of apps, and in return, those other citizens will review yours. And it's great for exposure and kind of keeping your app numbers up.
So one quick question at that point. So if, say, me and you both signed up and I signed up and left a review for one of your apps, would it then be expected that you would leave a review for one of my apps? Or does the karma points, it's just totally unrelated and you would never be like a trade like that?
Yeah, it's totally unrelated. There would never be a trade. And in fact, if you and I both signed up, I might never see your app, because what happens is you basically say like, okay, I'm ready to give someone a review. You hit the button and you're basically just given a random app from the system.
Okay.
And you can pick it's both iOS and Android, even though for the purposes of this podcast, we'll be focusing on iOS only. And it's both free apps and paid apps. And so, well, yeah, like, so say you're like, I want to review a free iOS app. It'll just give you one to download. And after you have uploaded your review, you'll get a point. And at some later moment in time, that point will be deducted to review one of your apps. And it's in no way related. There's no trading, and you can't go and find anyone's specific apps on the service.
And so how does it work if, say, I've got an app which is paid? I hadn't considered paid apps. So do I get like a four karma points, or, you know, like, is there like different levels so that I'm not giving out reviews for paid apps, but only receiving reviews for free apps? Or is that kind of balance taken care of?
Yes. So you basically have there's like a management screen, and your paid apps and your free apps are separated. And what you do is basically for your free apps, it's kind of a one review is a 1 point situation. So, you know, if you provide a review for a free app on Smooth Reviews, in return, at some point, one of your free apps will get one review. Mm. For paid apps, it's 1 point per dollar spent. So to get an app of yours that costs $2.99 reviewed, you would have to spend at least $2.99 reviewing other apps. But you're never actually paying for a review, and you never trade those reviews directly with another developer. It's all kind of into this bucket and taken out of this bucket.
Right. And so I guess you've got two buckets. You've got your free bucket and your paid bucket.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. There's both a free mode and a pro mode with Smooth Reviews, and they're not that different. The free mode works basically how I just said, you know, download an app and review it, you get a point. At some point, someone will review your app. The pro mode it kind of gives you like a few boosts and customization. So what you have is this really cool feature. You can basically, there's a queue for when you're next going to get your review. And the queue is a kind of overall combination of the number of free apps and paid apps on both iOS and Android that are kind of ahead of you. And ahead of you means how long it's been since those apps have gotten a review. So there's kind of like a fairness system where you won't be skipped for a review unless the person getting reviewed ahead of you has waited longer, if that makes sense.
Right. So you kind of join in a first in, first out basis, and then if you pay, you can jump higher up the queue.
Yes, basically, I think what happens is if you pay, you jump the queue at twice the normal rate.
And how much does it cost to be a pro person?
20 US a month. There's a couple of things you can do to target a little bit the types of reviews you're trying to get if you're a pro user. Like you can block reviews from certain countries, or you can limit the type of apps that you yourself are shown. Say you absolutely just like hate trivia apps or something like that. You could make sure that you're not given any trivia apps to review.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty good. So for me, I wouldn't want to see games because I don't play hardly any games and I wouldn't be able to do a good job of reviewing them. Whereas something like utilities, I feel like I could do a good job of reviewing those.
And the thing is, it's kind of one of those services where you get out of it what you put into it. That's kind of like the karmic back and forth to it. So you could actually keep it a very narrow focus. Like you could just review news apps, and then in return you could only have like your news app on the store, and maybe it would definitely take longer because you're obviously pulling from a smaller pot, but you could keep your experience very niche.
Okay, that's good to know. And so when did you first sign up for it?
Oh man, I don't remember when I first discovered this. It's definitely been around for a few years.
Okay.
The reason I first came into it was a lot of the reasons that you and I, Lewis, have talked about why we're doing the podcast at all, and that is discovery and exposure. Not to give away too much of the good stuff, but one of the main reasons I've used Smooth Reviews in the past is the fact that it keeps my apps. I feel like they're found more often. At times when I was getting more Smooth reviews, and then I would check my analytics dashboard in iTunes Connect, I would be both A, having more impressions, and B, also having more income. And it's not like it was like, oh, every time I got one review, I made an extra $5, or I couldn't quite quantify it like one for one, but it was more like the general trend was when I had a dearth of reviews, I had a dearth of sales. And when I didn't, I did have sales.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen any that thing like you say, like any statistics, like X reviews means Y downloads. But I have heard multiple times that reviews is a significant factor in your downloads. I think that's definitely just held to be a universal truth of the App Store. For actual customers, they want to see apps with lots of reviews, and the odd bad review actually doesn't. It's almost better if you've got 100 reviews and 10 of them are bad. That's still the total number of reviews is still a good indicator for most people.
This might be me sounding paranoid, but I feel like there is an inherent distrust into something that's either A, no reviews, or B, totally perfect. Like nothing is totally perfect. Like your favorite restaurant in the world still has a couple reviews online from someone.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to break down the experience of using the free mode versus the pro mode because I have done both. And kind of the high level of it is in the free mode, you might be waiting a while for a review. Like I said, there's a queue system, so you can actually see, oh, I have like 55 apps ahead of me. Even though, like I said, it's an amalgamated queue. It's not necessarily the number of free iOS apps that are ahead of you, but it's kind of like a general waiting system mode. And so with the free one, you might just be sitting there for a while waiting for reviews. And the thing I haven't mentioned yet is there's actually a feature called Jump Queue, where when you go to rate another app, instead of getting a point, you can actually jump to the top of the queue.
Okay, that's clever. If we take an example, so say I sign up tomorrow and I leave a handful of reviews, but don't pay any money and just do the review, build my karma points. Like roughly how long do you think it will be before I would see a review on my apps? Would it be like a day, a week, a month? Like may I never see one, do you think? Or
in the smallest sense, maybe a few hours, like 5 to 10 hours. If you were going to do the example you just said, I would probably build up a bunch of karma points and then do a queue jump. Like in the past, what I had done is say you just got an app review, right? You immediately pop all the way to the back of the queue. What I would do then is for the next app you review, do one queue jump because other people are going to do the queue jump as well. So you get yourself kind of out of the pits and then you just kind of let nature take over.
Yeah, okay.
what's the summation of all this? Like, the apps I've built in the past, none of them have a built-in audience, and a lot of times they're one-offs and stuff like that. So you basically constantly need to keep it fresh. And if you're releasing regular updates like a good app developer, which I am sometimes not always doing, you're constantly starting over with 0 reviews. And I know they're changing that now. I think you said with like in a past podcast, like starting in iOS 9 or something like that, you can have it stop resetting your reviews when you release an update. But for the most of the history of the App Store, the reviews start over, and smooth reviews is a way to like kind of keep a little bit in the pot. Like, I remember, this is going to sound so old school, but like back when you would get a bank account and you would have physical checks, I remember the first time I got checks when I was like either 16 or 18 years old, and Bank of America was like, they asked what number the checks should start at, because like no one starts their checks at number 1, because then it looks like you just got started. You start your checks at like 450. So you've been like a man about town. You've been writing checks everywhere. And it's so ridiculous because everybody does it, which means everybody knows it's bullshit.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that whole kind of, you could see it, especially historically, being especially useful for the whole 5 reviews thing. So, you see the message, this app doesn't have enough reviews for us to show them. And you're like, yes, I got 4 reviews. I just need the one more to push me over the edge, and it's going to make that big difference. Even if just for getting the 5 reviews so you have something, I think it seems to me like it would be worth it just for that, and just to accelerate that process, especially when you do a new release.
Damn, that's an excellent point. I forgot the fact that like if you don't have enough reviews, it'll actually say that. And I feel like the message is like the worst part. There are not enough reviews to show.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you've got an app which has had like hundreds of good reviews on previous editions potentially, but then your current version 0 reviews, and you're just back to square one. Like, exactly, like this is my first check that I've ever written. You're back there. So, in light of all of the changes, that Apple have made and are making, so they're going to ban in iOS 11, they're going to ban somehow the kind of irate style where it just pops up a modal dialogue. That is no longer going to be allowed. I don't know how they're going to enforce that, or if they're going to enforce that, or whatever. But the fact is, the principle will be there, and so it becomes something to be worried about doing. And you've also got the ratings system now, where you don't have to actually go and type a review. You can just do a rating, which is going to really reduce the friction and all these kind of things. So do you feel like smooth reviews is something that you feel like you will phase out in the future? Or, I mean, to me, I'm excited I haven't really heard of it before. I think I'm definitely going to check it out at the very least, especially for for smaller apps or for new apps. It seems like it would be it's still going to be a worthwhile thing. Do you agree with that, or what do you think?
I do agree with that, and I actually think you kind of hit it perfectly. Where the new SK Store review controller that Apple's going to do will definitely make it easier and lower that barrier to getting ratings. But I just had one pop up yesterday for my podcast app, Castro, but I rated it 5 stars and didn't leave a review. And I'm sure that is going to be the experience of a lot of developers. And so Smooth Reviews still fills that need. It still gives you physical on-the-ground reviews. And actually, one thing I haven't talked about yet is actually the kind of like the bonus feature of it is, for me as a developer, I've actually learned a lot from using it, where not only will I get apps that maybe some of them I find them, reprehensible, but it will actually give me a lot of what not to do. And then there's actually a few I've played, like a couple games and a few other things where I'm like, oh, that's a really clever design mechanic, or that's a really interesting way you decided to integrate the ad unit. And what it gives me is, it gives me a way to be outside my developer zone. Like, inevitably, I'm going to be attracted to a certain kind of game, a certain kind of developer, and that is going to limit me. But on Smooth Reviews, you have no control over that. Like, you are shown a random app from the ether, which means you're going to get like a completely wide-ranging experience. And I've gotten lots of apps from developers who aren't based in English-speaking countries, a lot of Russian apps and other apps in Asia. And it's really interesting, just like subtle differences in how apps menus are organized and, setting screens are implemented and functionality. And I think it's in a very small but substantial way, it's making me a better developer because I'm just more aware of how there is a way to do things. And so even for that alone, I think the service is worth using, which is completely separate from the new App Store changes.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting. And like we said before, I kind of ranted about that terrible World Clock app. It was terrible, but it gave me a lot of ideas of like how can I take the bits out of this and use them in a less terrible way and things like that. So yeah, you can't have too many ideas, I don't think, or too much inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Plus, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't have any way to replicate what the service has provided in the past. Like if I'm in iTunes Connect and I'm looking at my analytics dashboard and I'm looking at the week over week, where you either have lots of very happy green arrows pointing up or sad red arrows pointing down. On the times when I haven't kept up my smooth reviews and I haven't had any reviews in a while, they tend to go down. And when I do smooth reviews, they tend to go up. And that's just because, I'm under no delusions. None of the apps I've made or used in the past have massive fan bases, and they're not coming up under maybe super common search terms. So even a few reviews a week is enough to kind of keep it fresh and above that fray of maybe apps that never get downloaded.
Sure. And have you ever had any problems with the reviews that other people have left or that you've left been kind of removed by Apple? I think you mentioned this off pod, maybe. But yeah, is that, am I making that up, or do the reviews sometimes kind of disappear?
That has happened in the past. There's a thing I remember reading somewhere on the internet where if someone deletes your app quickly, sometimes maybe Apple won't keep the review, or Apple is just particularly diligent about removing crappy reviews. I mean, I wouldn't say that's necessarily the biggest, because plenty of reviews I get both from when I've used smooth reviews and just from, natural discovery are great app, totally fixed my thing.
Yeah. Okay. So it does happen, but it's pretty rare. It's not a big factor.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's enough of a problem that you wouldn't use the service. And besides the fact, if you notice, if you wait a few days and the review never shows up, you can report the review and be like, hey, this isn't in the App Store. It's been 7 days. And you'll probably get the karma point back.
Right. Okay. That's good to know. So they deal with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a pretty fair, very karma-based service.
Okay. That's good. Well, yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out.
Well, I look forward to your rating and review using it on a future episode. Cool. So should we do our ridiculous app ideas?
Yeah, let's. I was thinking, Nick hates all these slots apps, but there must be one slot app that Nick could convert you. And I think it's a slot app for burgers. So it would just be burgers spinning rounds, and they come up and Nick's like, burgers every time. I think that would make you happy.
I think it's genius. And I think even more so, instead of earning money or points or whatever, if you win the jackpot, you literally get burgers.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's amazing.
All right, so this one's based on the fact that yesterday I went and got a burger. I'm in Berlin right now, and the menu was written in chalk, and it's written in chalk right over the counter. So you basically have to be right up at the person, and then kind of crane your neck to figure out what you want. And it's all in German. Of course, it should be in German, and I can read it all well enough. But you don't have that split of time to process before you're put on the spot. The ridiculous app idea that I had was an augmented reality app that overlays ridiculously specific food reviews over those menus. So I could hold I could stand back a few feet and hold my phone up to that, and it would be oh, this is the burger you want. The bacon is totally on point. Or it could be definitely don't get this one. It has tons of raw red onion and your breath's going to smell all day long. Something like that.
Yeah, so kind of like Foursquare and Yelp into AR.
Yeah, but hyper specific. Because I actually think that was the thing Google Glass did way back in the day. It was it could overlay the Foursquare ratings over the restaurants. I want it over the menu, and I want it to tell me kind of like what my ridiculous app was last week or the week before with the am I going to regret the dessert? Like, help guide me to the correct menu item here.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds ridiculous, but also genius.
Thank you. Basically, all my ridiculous genius ideas are centered around food.
And rightly so.
All right, credits time.
Sure is.
The App Collective podcast is created by us, Nick and Lewis. The editing is all done by me, so if you've got any audio recommendations for how I can make the pod sound better, definitely let me know.
If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review in the iTunes so others can discover the show. You can find us on Twitter. Nick's at nsneebly and I'm at Itinerant Dev. The show's at App Collective Co. You can also get in touch on the website. We'd love your feedback on this week's episode and the podcast in general.
And finally, we'd love it if you'd support us on Patreon. It's dangerous to go alone, and even $1 helps support us directly as app developers. There's a ton of perks, and we've got a great Slack community. You can check it all out at podcast.appcollective.co.
But I guess every time, I think that would make you happy.